Good morning. Today's the next day after I've done two of these, and this will probably be the last one I do for a minute. So let's enjoy it, shall we? Been pretty busy here, and I do promise you I will be changing the shirt after my shower later on, so you won't see this one on the next one, probably. Today is November 27th. I'm here to talk to you about the Synthetic Men of Mars. I'm happy this actually is the latest audiobook I've just dropped, so I'll be putting that in the description below. So if you want to come listen to it, feel free. If you've already read this, congratulations, you're doing good. And if you haven't read this yet, but you're on the fence, maybe this will put you in a certain direction or make you want to. I love when people read. I'm an avid reader myself, that's why I even do this. So, without further ado, let's talk about The Synthetic Men of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is actually the ninth book in Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter series. They call it Barsoom, which is their term for Mars, so it's either John Carter of Mars or even John Carter of Barsoom. But the world began with that character. He's in most of the stories, at least tangentially, if not directly. And he's in this one too. So this was updated. It took me about 6 months to record and edit that audiobook. It was like 31 chapters in total. Unfortunately, with that 6 months, 2 months were taken away from me, the last 2 months, because I had surgery on my knee, got surgery on my shoulder, then I got sick, and then I got COVID, and then I got sick again. So it's just all a mess. But I could not do anything with this throat and this voice, so I was kind of like on hiatus. I did what I can do, however, it is finished, it's out there. At the same time I was doing that, I'm also tackling the Bible as a project, chapter by chapter. It's on this channel if you wish to read or listen to any of them. It's up to you. Go ahead. On top of all that, I am a father of two. I have a loving wife and a full-time career on top of everything else. So my time is very limited to have like a quiet home to have even record in. Usually it's like in the early AM between like 5 and 6:30 at most. Otherwise there's kids around, TVs are on, God knows. So it takes time. Hopefully with this, maybe it'll be a full-time job someday. Fingers crossed, prayers to heaven. So, but I digress. I want to talk to you about the Synthetic Men of Mars. And I do want you to know, here's a little caveat, a little warning regarding spoilers that will occur at the very, very end of this. I got a couple things that I want to get off my chest regarding this story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I will then say thank you, goodbye, and you'll see the caption to like or subscribe, because you got to throw that out there somewhere when you do this. And after that will be the spoilers. So you'll have plenty of time and warning to cut off before that happens. And it's not even spoilers, it's more like opinions that are not suitable for as we're going along. Okay, so let me jump right into this one. I didn't know what to expect from the Synthetic Men of Mars when I got into it. This is the first time I read it. I was expecting, obviously, some kind of like made people in some fashion, but what we got, I was not expecting, and it got kind of weird. And I'm sure if you had somebody like whoever did the visual effects for The Thing from John Carpenter in this, it would have been visually off the freaking charts. But what can I say? What do I have here? So this one kind of hits the ground running as far as the story is concerned. So what happens in the very, very beginning, off screen, is John Carter's love interest, Deja Thoris, pretty much gets into a Barsoomian car wreck. And her body is completely, I don't want to say destroyed, but it is a wreck. You don't get too much descriptions, but what they do tell you is every other doctor on Helium or anywhere else has tried to work on her, has been unsuccessful. So they've given up. Now our hero John Carter is not the kind of man who gives up. So he goes around, and the cool thing is he jumps back 3 books to grab a character from the Mastermind of Mars. And he's actually looking for the Mastermind of Mars himself, Ross Thavas. Now, when you read The Mastermind of Mars, this guy's almost practically a villain the majority of the time. He's like the Dr. Mengele of Mars. But he was nobly intended, so that's usually where you get the worst of the villains. But he was there doing things. He knew how to take bodies apart, put them back together, whatever else. Who better to fix Deja Thors than this guy? So Edgar Rice Burroughs says, I already built this character, might as well use him more, right? He didn't die at the end of that book. And I'm not spoiling it because it was 3 books ago, so let's get the butcher to heal my wife. That's what John Carter thinks. So in order to do this, he, of course, someone wants to always go with him. So he grabs this young Padwar, and off they go to the great Tunolian marshes, which pretty much is a huge swampland. It's got, huge giant insects. It's got monsters. It's got savages. But it's also the last place on Mars that has any form of water. So it's almost as if this is the last vestige of the great rolling seas and oceans of Barsoom. And it's just waiting for this part to actually erode and evaporate into the atmosphere before all water, natural water, is gone. But that is where it's said that Rostavus has his home. So, grabs the Padwar. His name is Vordage. He pretty much becomes the central point of this whole story. And off they go. Because they're not sure if he's still there. So you got to kind of find him, go down leads, figure out where Rostavus is, yada, yada, yada. Well, of course, when they're down there, they get attacked. There's an ambush. And they make great work of the people who are attacking them, with one exception. They're not dying. John Carter and Vordage are hacking off limbs, even hacking off heads. And the head would lay there on the ground, cursing at them and trying to command a headless body that's just running rampant. Where to go to get these people they're trying to capture. And the horde that they go into is they're literally mutations of people. Yeah, they're on 2 legs, they got 2 arms, sometimes, but their features are all distorted. Their eyes aren't in the right place, their ears might be where their mouth is, and their nose might be on top of their head. They're just grotesque. But they can fight well enough due to the fact that they can't die, that they overpower our John Carter and our Vordage. And they put them on these flying reptiles, along with some other prisoners, and boom, they go off to this one little place that's inside of Tunel called Morbus. Okay? They got a back and forth with the people who run it. There's these 7 kings, the 7 Jeds run it, and of course, being run by more than one person is always easy, and they get along perfectly, of course. But the bottom line when it comes to it is they're being held captive and are given the choice to die or join them. Because these are actual Red Man warriors that can be lieutenants for this horde of monsters for these 7 Jeds. And of course, when you say die or do that, most people will do that instead of dying. So our heroes are pretty much going to be there to teach the army that's trying to overrun the world. Now, a little side note though, this is where things focus in the story, is when Vordage and John Carter are captured, there's other people that are captured, including a woman. And of course, the woman is the most beautiful woman in the world that Vordage has ever seen. And he learns pretty soon that her name is Janai. And a lot of stories back then, and even Edgar Rice Burroughs, how he writes things, it's the era of, I must save her. And therefore I love her. And then that's it. Don't have to know anything about this girl except I love her, and that's going to be the full motivation for the character. It's funny how I've learned recently this thing regarding how men, the protagonists, get their aim, their goals, their desires in books. And there's something out there that people are talking about called The Woman in the Fridge. This, by the way, is hysterical. And I'll put a link to it down below in the Wiki page that talks about it. But essentially, there is a trope, a syndrome, that says in order for the protagonist to have motivation and get, drive and whatever, and start going from wherever he is now to the next level, either of the story or of his growth, you need a plot device. And the plot device is the damsel in distress. And sometimes it's a matter of killing a woman, or a woman gets in danger. And they call this thing the woman in the fridge. It started when someone created like a blog or a page about this. When not too long ago there was a Green Lantern comic book, and there was a villain trying to antagonize the protagonist. I think this Green Lantern is Kyle Rayner. And of course there's a panel where he goes home, or he's looking for his girl, and the fridge is literally cracked open and her body is stuffed in it. The villain killed the girlfriend, shoved her in the fridge, and now Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, is going to go out there and go after the villain. So this has become the thing where there's so many stories that have, like even this one here, the woman, Deja Thoris, gets into an accident. That makes John Carter go out and start the story. Now they're here and they're captured, and one of the captures is a woman, Janai. And now Vordage is going to do everything he can to claim her victory, or claim her freedom, and then maybe he'll get like a victory in order to love her and live forever with her. But it's so funny that this happens, and it's become an actual like woman in the fridge trope. If I wanted to go against it, I would laugh, because you can go back to something as simple as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, who got his motivation of his Uncle Ben dying. But that was the 60s. It gave you that whole great power becomes great responsibility. And it was a man, and, this is about women in fridges, not uncles. So, read about it. I personally think, the forethought to come to this conclusion by people thinking it's a big trope is fantastic. It has a lot of forethought, and to see it as a thing and be insightful of it. But on the other side, it is just downright hilarious. And I think the main focus is it's supposed to point to the weaknesses in writing motivation and backstory for your male protagonist. Enough said on that. Let's put it all together. So, we're now in this Morbus place, and what's happening is they're churning out these synthetic men. They call them Hormads. And they're churning them out because the Jeds have this idea of world conquest, even though they've never seen the world outside of Morbus in the Great Tunolian Marshes. But one of the 7 Jeds has a fondness for the new captive, Janai. And he takes ownership over her, over the other 6 Jeds. And now Vordage must do something. So what he ends up doing is he talks to Rostavas, and he goes, hey, you were famous 3 books ago of actually transplanting a person's brain into another body. Can you transplant my brain into one of these Hormads? And maybe I can go and get in this Jed's army that has Janai, and I'll do some reconnoitering inside as a Hormad. No one will know it's me, and I'll find out where she is, and I'll try to find a way to rescue her. So, of course, he gets put into the body of the truliest, ugliest of any Hormad that has ever been created. However, for his advantage, he's extremely large and very strong, but he's got like one huge eye on the top of this part of the head and the other small eyes down here. His mouth goes on a huge angle from down by his chin up to his ear. One arm is extremely larger than another, and it's longer too. Almost reminds me of the Mr. Hyde in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. How, like, the bad guy, not the good Hyde, the bad Hyde, had this huge arm. I wonder if that's where they got it from, too. Now, the one way Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of twists this is the slow mutant that he gets into, the Hormad, was actually a new body for one of the heads that they had lopped off in the adventure at the beginning. And he actually has a name, tor-dur-bar, which actually means like 1,420 or something like that. And he was named after the numbereth Hormad that was created. So they were having a conversation after being captured going back to Morbus, And somewhere along the line, Vordage and tor-dur-bar become friends. And tor-dur-bar wants to see Vordage more when they're in Morbus. So it's one of those things that, because that conversation happened while in captivity and being moved, Janai was there. So she remembers and knows that tor-dur-bar said, hey, Vordage, I will be your friend forever. So that's kind of where they get along with a lot of this stuff. That he was able to use this new body that was horrible, find Janai, try to get her out of there, but convince her that he's there to help by saying, hey, you recognize me. We were, there, we captured you, and you saw me being friend to Vordage, and Vordage wants to help you. Therefore, I will help you. I am your friend, just like Vordage is. It's a tangential motivation for the abominable monster helping out the pretty lady, but it's enough to just convince you and move forward. I was going to go through a high-level summary chapter by chapter of what this is, but I do want first-time readers or first-time listeners, maybe, to go through it and be surprised as it happens without spoilers. So let me go high-level real quick and just say this is kind of what piques your interest on the synthetic men of Mars. At one point, obviously, the Seven Jeds are going to go to war. And then at one point, Rostavus and John Carter have to flee to go try to fix Deja Thoris and leave everyone behind. Oh no, who's going to put his brain back in his real body? There's a culture vat that spits out these things, these hormads, and of course it goes rampant with Rostavus not being there to monitor it, and it starts just spitting out this huge, hideous, Akira-esque thing filled with body parts, and it's coming from the culture, so it just continuously keeps coming out like one of those, what are those black fireworks that you light and just kind of spits out this little turd? It's like that, but a big monster. And it keeps coming out, threatening to overflow the whole place. You have escapes. You escape to, unfortunately, a bad new city called Ghoulie, and there's a mighty jet there, and there's duels, and there's arena battles, and yada yada. And then you end up over in another new city named Amhor, where now people are caged and locked up. In the meantime, there's a coup d'etat going on. Great fleets of warships. So, and there's even a little discussion about how the water has escaped all of Mars/Barsoom, and how one day Earth will be the same way. So there's a lot going on in this book, and it will take you from adventure to adventure to adventure and wrap it all up for you as well. So there you have it. Being published over the course of 6 weeks in something called the Argosy Weekly Magazine, which was like January through February 1939. That's the way books kind of came out back then, is they'd be installments in a magazine week by week or maybe month by month. Edgar Rice Burroughs actually even has one in 6 issues of a newspaper that came out. That was Ben, King of Beasts. I think I have a story of that here as well. So this story is 90, 85 years old, give or take. I think it's one for you. So, thanks for listening to this. That's all I have for you for now. I'm going to put up the graphic, because now I want to get into like the semi-spoiler, semi-critique that I had when going through this. So, I'll give you a little pause. And if you want to stop right here, please stop right here. If you want to listen to what I have to say, keep going on. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay. And this isn't earth-shattering. I'm sorry if you're expecting it or if I hyped it up in that fashion. The whole I just met her, so I love her thing, I know that worked for its time. It doesn't age well. And it's funny, like, even during the whole thing that's going on there, as the monster talking to Janai, and Janai's like, but I don't even know Vordage. She's making the point. But he's like, no, I think he loves you. Don't worry about it. I'm going to do everything I can for you because you're loved by Vordage, yada, yada, yada. I understand love at first sight, and all that jazz. But in this story, this guy, Vordage, he's the 40-year-old virgin. This is just a damsel in distress thing, and it must be the thing that lights his fire. And they spend entirely too much time, to my liking, on the whole internal thought battle. I love her, but I'm in the body of a monster, and she cannot know this. And that whole arena in his mind that was going back and forth, blah, 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 blah. I kind of wonder if Edgar Rice Burroughs was going through his own kind of marriage thing when this was going on, and it kind of bled into his work. He just spent a lot of real estate on the pages to go through this, and I was just kind of over it personally. But I knew where it was going. I pretty much knew how it was going to get there, and it pretty much did. So, to that event, even after all this went on, and he finally said, okay, here's where the climax is going to happen, and the ending happened, I also thought the ending was kind of hurried. It was like, let's get this relationship going now. And that's it. Once the relationship was worked out, it's like, all right, we're safe. Drop the bombs. Let's go home. And they did. It was just over. Forget about Ahmad being an actual Jed out there, and he had an army, but they escaped. Is he coming back someday? Maybe. Forget about all the non-Akira Hormads that are out there. You still got thousands, if not millions, of these things running around in the small thing of the Tunolian marshes. When this is all done, they just bombed the thing, made sure it was done, and said, the end. Alright. Still it was enjoyable beginning to end, but, some of this stuff was I don't know if it was just tropey or just I just didn't care enough about their relationship to make it be so much. But I read every word, I recorded every word, and it's out there for you if you wish. Alright, I'm done now. Thank you for listening. As always, I'll say, keep reading, and cheers. Take it easy now.